Hey, here we go. Just trying to position this little iPhone here. Always pays to have the book right side up. Okay, so we left off talking about some analogies from water. For the length and width of an idea, we said that width means a lot of details, and how most ideas are multifaceted. You can look at them from different angles. That was like the width of a river as opposed to a very narrow river, which is just like looking at an idea from one angle to the exclusion of other angles or other perspectives. Usually you hear that come up in conversation. People talk about someone who's very broad-minded versus very narrow-minded, for example. Although, as an interesting side note, people routinely take that out of context and assume the definition of broad-minded means kind of open to accepting anything about anything, which is preposterous. But whatever. That was kind of a pet peeve of mine in school. Anyways, the length represents the conceptual descent of the idea, and that means simplifying it for people, and that happens through analogies. So you take some idea, some concept, and you explain it in terms of things that they can relate to from their day-to-day life. Exactly like the Miller Rebbe is doing here. He's talking to us, let's say, about the intellect in terms of rivers, right? Rivers are things we probably have seen before in our life, like going hiking or on vacation or something like that. So it makes it a lot easier to relate to. Now we're going to talk about the third dimension of the idea, which is the depth of it, which pretty much is the bottom line point of the idea. And then we'll talk a little about the relationship between these three dimensions of length, width, and depth, and how they relate to each other and how we see them play out day to day and all that. All right, here we go. So, just trying to stall here with that nice little tune while I find the place. Note to self, keep finger on place before starting tape. Okay, ve'ha'omek, in the depth of the idea, hu ka'omek hanahar, it's like the depth of a river, shemisham yisrachiv, that from there it gets wide, u'ba'atzmaino rachav klal, but it itself is not wide at all. So the depth of a river, the different dimensions of the river depend on it, but it itself doesn't look like it's much at all. And we'll get more into that here, but the basic sneak preview is that if you have a very deep river, right, so the space of the depth is not necessarily that big, but nonetheless, if the river is very deep, so it's also very wide and long. And if a river is very shallow, so it's going to be more narrow and shorter. So let's just read this inside. So he said the depth is like the depth of a river, that from there it gets wide, but it itself is not wide at all. Aval hu ikar etzam hanahar hanikra shturim, but the depth of the river is the primary essence of the river, which is called the undercurrent. Shehu ikar merutzes hilucho mimakaro. Sometimes I think it pays to have coffee before these classes. I'm trying to catch my words here. But anyways, so it's the primary flowing and going of the water from its source. Shal gabe begovel etzadei omek tfilim elav, and the water on top and to the sides of the depth are secondary in relation to it. She'enan rak bechnet hitgabrut hitpashtuto bilvad, in that they represent only this, or they're proportionate to the strength of its flow, right? So like we said outside a moment ago, the deeper the river, the wider and the longer, and the more shallow the river, the more narrow and shorter. So that shows that, what's primary, what's secondary here. So the depth is primary, and the width and the length, being proportionate to it, are secondary. Okay. Let's study barochev to the sides and width, ubagova, and in height, ubaorach hahiluch, and in the length of its path, etc. Oh, right. So you're probably wondering now why we mentioning height. I thought we said there's length, width, and depth. The 3 dimensions. Is height a 4th dimension. So it seems to me at this time that height is not really separate from length. It's the opposite direction. So just as you can use examples and analogies to explain concepts in more concrete, more tangible, more particular terms, so in the opposite direction, once you grasp a concept, once you get the point of the concept, you can actually look at it in more general terms or abstract it. So in that respect, conceptually, you're moving in an upward direction and you're looking at things in a broader scope. So it doesn't look like a separate dimension. It looks like that's included in length. At least that seems to me at this time. Okay, so we'll continue on in the next tape.